In a post-Soviet country, most of the media I was exposed to was predominantly Russian Soviet films and folklore, and it has definitely shaped my perception of film, but am I necessarily correct in saying that older films shot in film, and even newer ones, have more character than those shot on digital? It's a debate that cannot really be settled. While having the technology to make impressive and high-budget films shot on digital camera, I can't help but feel they lack in character. I would absolutely hate to quote Tarantino here for his mere existence, but he says,
I think it's the death keel. I think it's the death rattle.
and as pretentious as he is, can we argue that he has a point? Let's first look at the classic Russian Soviet film Ivan Vasilievich меняет профессию, or Ivan Vasilievich Changes Profession in English, by Leonid Gaiday. The cast is incredible, and especially the music. We follow a unique storyline of a man who invents a time-travelling device and gets in trouble with his landlord. After a mishap with the device, the landlord and the robber, who honestly purely adds slapstick comedic value. I mean, we don't really know why he ends up there, but anyway, they get trapped in Imperial Russia and somehow the landlord gets swapped with Tsar Ivan the Terrible. Although it's hard to call him terrible after the pure comedic joy this guy delivers throughout the film, which of course is anti-Tsarist propaganda due to the political state of the USSR. It's hard to find exactly what filming device this was shot on due to when it was released in 1973, but it is clearly done on a film camera, which I feel not only can be stripped down to lack of digital devices, but it has a signature homely look with the grainy image and vignette filters, almost taking you back to your childhood watching on devices that weren't insane quality-wise. Even the audio quality, it isn't fantastic, yet it feels like a real conversation and is not packaged in plastic like many digital films. When it comes to Последний богатырь, it encapsulates the issue with capitalism in film perfectly. Although trying to do what Ivan Vasilievich did with adapting Russian plays and folklore into film, it falls flat and creates what seems to be a soulless money grab in terms of modern Russian cinema. Produced by Disney, it follows the character of... Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I had to interrupt writing the script because I can't even remember the protagonist's name. It's worse than Avatar at this point. It follows Ivan Nadeevnev, who coincidentally also travels back in time after pretending to be a psychic. Believe me, that does not get mentioned again in the film. Despite having very good cinematography and at times being enjoyable due to the choreography of fights and CGI being pretty impressive, it tries to incorporate Russian folklore in terms of Baba Yaga, who they did so dirty, and the merman. Once again, not even a character in folklore. They made it up, and I don't believe it paid off looking at whatever this is. Regardless, it made $28.8 million, which would make it the highest grossing local language film at the time in 2017. But can it be stripped down to a one-time watch, as the digital factor serves as a shock factor to make a profit and not entertain, which is arguably the goal of any film as an art form. Although Soviet film made steps to digitalize in the form of colouring in every individual frame of old films, in which this process adopted the name Kinemacolor and the 2-colour system and 3-colour system, in an attempt to perhaps attract younger audiences. The first Soviet chronicle in colour was Цветущая молодость, or Blossoming Youth, released on 20th of October in 1938, and since many have followed in the steps of this film, colouring in every individual frame to make it stand the test of time. Although the plot stayed the same, with only the colouring changing, and it kept the film free and openly available due to communism, making it easy to find to this day on YouTube even with English subtitles. The lack of budget, however, does not in any way affect just how good the storytelling is and how iconic it has become, culture-wise. Bogatyr almost tried to tell an old story with the use of expensive modern-day digital technology, but fell flat on his face when recreating the stories every Russian born around my era was familiar with. The graininess is missing, taking away that nostalgia, and is replaced with advertiser-friendly cheap jokes that simply do not make up for the lost culture. If you can't take my word for it, take what George Lucas says in an interview.
You're forced to make a particular kind of movie. And they'd say, oh, but aren't you so glad that you're in America? I said, well, I know a lot of Russian filmmakers. They have a lot more freedom than I have. All they have to do is be careful about criticizing the government. Otherwise, they can do anything they want.
And so what do you have to do?
You have to adhere to a very narrow line of commercialism.
This shows the correlation between capitalism and cinema and how digital film is a byproduct of capitalism, and is its culture stripped in order to make a profit, while those not governed by it have true freedom, apart from, of course, criticizing the government, to make entertaining films. All in all, Bogatyr isn't a terrible movie. It shines in what it's good at, but to say digital film is better simply cannot be correct, as it misses those key lovable elements of film that cannot be digitalized.